Hello everyone and welcome to this CPD session related to child-on-child abuse. This is one of our safeguarding bite sizes. If you haven't already done so, please let us know that you can hear us okay by using the question box which you'll find in the control panel on the right-hand side of your screen. We encourage questions, so please use the question box to share any that you may have. This session is a mixture of providing information, asking questions and sharing ideas and thoughts. We'll be using interactive activities and we look forward to using your existing knowledge and experience to tailor our input. First of all, let's have some welcome and introductions. I'm Stacey Mann and I am the subject specialist here at NCFE for early years and childcare. And I'm joined today by Kelly Johnson, who is our Provider Development Officer. We have both of our email addresses there on screen, just in case you do have any further questions when you go back to the classroom and feel the need to reach out and ask for a bit of further support. Some of the content on today's session is potentially disturbing and it makes reference to violence and sexual behaviour, so please ensure that you take breaks if you need them. Also, if any of the participants are affected by any of the content in today's session or you have concerns regarding child-on-child abuse, please speak to your designated safeguarding lead or deputy. You can see on your screen at the moment the intentions for today's session. So they are to raise awareness of this wider form of abuse and really put it into a bite size so that we can digest everything that is going on with one specific area of safeguarding, with safeguarding being such a huge topic to cover. We'll be considering the Ofsted Education Inspection Framework, and we will reflect on signs and indicators and policies and practice. We always start our bite-sized sessions by you having a look at this poll for us. So it's all about thinking about your confidence, your starting confidence level related to today's topic. Really important to check in with yourself and think, okay, do I feel confident about my knowledge and understanding of child-on-child abuse? With 1 being low and 10 being high. How would you rate your knowledge and understanding of peer-on-peer abuse? And when you've thought about that, at the end, we will revisit that question to really give you an opportunity to reflect on what you've heard and think about where you are now, because hopefully you will have travelled a journey with us today. So what do you know already? It's important to recognise that abuse isn't always perpetrated by adults. Children can abuse other children, and it can happen both inside and outside of educational settings and, of course, online. This is referred to as child-on-child abuse, which is formally known as peer-on-peer abuse. In the Education Inspection Framework in the Behaviours and Attitudes section, there are some key points that inspectors will use to make a judgment on, but these are the ones related more specifically to child-on-child abuse. So the provider has high expectations for learners' behaviour and conduct and applies these expectations consistently and fairly. This is reflected in learners' behaviour and conduct. We also have leaders, teachers and learners create an environment where bullying, child-on-child abuse or peer-on-peer abuse, as some of you may have heard it before, or discrimination are not tolerated. If they do occur, staff deal with the issues quickly and effectively and do not allow them to spread. So once you have thought about that particular area of the Education Inspection Framework, I really encourage you to go back to that after today's session to really think about how you're doing that and how all of your colleagues are making sure that they're working towards that. If you haven't read that part of the Education Inspection Framework, it's really useful to make sure that you're familiar with it so that you really know what you're working towards and you've got a measure to work to. So looking at the Education Inspection Framework, today's topic is included in the quality of education within the intent section. So let's have a look at that in a little bit more detail. So as we run through the areas where child-on-child abuse could be considered, again, really reflect on how you and your organisation ensure this important safeguarding issue is acknowledged, planned for, and how your learners are supported. Intent focuses on curriculum design, and this first bullet point focuses on how the subject is included in your curriculum. How is teaching and learning structured to cover it, and what are your learners' needs in relation to it? So let's take a look at that. Leaders take on or construct a curriculum that is ambitious and designed to give all learners, and I feel like we really should highlight all learners, particularly the most disadvantaged and those with special educational needs and disabilities or high needs, the knowledge and cultural capital they need to succeed in life. So is your curriculum designed in a way which effectively develops learners' knowledge and skills? So looking at that point there, the provider's curriculum is coherently planned and sequenced towards cumulatively sufficient knowledge and skills for future learning and employment. Ask yourself that question. Am I really designing this curriculum to develop the learners' knowledge and skills individually? And going back to that first point of giving all learners the knowledge and cultural capital. Then think about, is there sufficient ambition in relation to the learner's needs? And do providers make strong links of the curriculum to the topic? So the provider has the same academic, technical or vocational ambitions for almost all learners. Where this is not practical, for example, for some learners with high levels of SEND, its curriculum is designed to be ambitious and to meet their needs. That word ambitious keeps coming up. So are we making sure that there is sufficient ambition in relation to all of the learners' needs? Excuse me, sometimes that I revert to saying children instead of learners. Being the early years and childcare subject specialist, I tend to do that quite a lot. Learners study the full curriculum and providers ensure this by teaching a full range of subjects for as long as possible, specialising only where necessary. So do we make those strong links? We're sure that it could be argued that there are areas of implementation and impact which would also include child-on-child abuse. So please consider how your organisation and curriculum area would need to consider the topic. As I said before, please review this further after the session by exploring the EIF in relation to what your organisation already has in place, and then identify any areas that you feel need to be developed. We couldn't run a safeguarding bite size without talking about keeping children safe in education in 2022. This is our statutory guidance for schools and for colleges, and we really need to understand what's going in there. I would expect this copy in a staff room to have highlighting in, to have post-it notes stuck to it, to have writing all over it, and your copy yourself to really understand this so that we can make sure that we're reflecting on it all of the time and doing the best that we can for the children in our care. So part 5 of keeping children safe in education details child-on-child abuse and exactly what staff need to know. And it's a great starting point to ensure that everyone is up to date and aware. Awareness is key, we know this. The sexual abuse of children by other children is a specific safeguarding issue in education, and all staff should be aware of it and of their school or college's policy and procedure for dealing with it. It can happen both inside and outside of school or college and online. It's important that all staff recognise the indicators and signs of child-on-child abuse and know how to identify it and respond to reports. All staff should understand that even if there are no reports in their schools or colleges, it does not mean it's not happening. It may be the case that it's not just being reported. As such, it is important if staff have any concerns regarding child-on-child abuse, they should speak to their designated safeguarding lead, your DSL or your deputy DSL. It's essential that all staff understand the importance of challenging inappropriate behaviours between peers, between the children, between the young children that are actually abusive in nature. We need to think about that zero tolerance. It's essential that all staff understand this and also how to deal with these inappropriate behaviours in an effective way that really supports the whole class, the whole room, the whole staff team. Downplaying certain behaviours, for example, dismissing sexual harassment as just banter, just having a laugh, part of growing up, or boys being boys, can lead to a culture of unacceptable behaviours, an unsafe environment for children, and in worst case scenarios, a culture that normalises abuse, leading to children accepting it as normal and not coming forward to report it. And I'm sure we all have lots and lots of different case studies and different examples that we could think of to really think about that. So do you know what would be included as being inappropriate behaviours in relation to child-on-child abuse? What a good question to start with in a staff meeting. So for example, you've been on your training today, you have a staff meeting coming up next week. Ask your head teacher, whoever is leading that meeting, if you can have a little slot, 10 minutes, to just feedback all of these things that you've learned today that you can put into place. And that first question could be, do you know what would be included as being inappropriate behaviours in relation to child-on-child abuse? So let's have a look at some of these behaviours now and explore what keeping children safe in education tells us about how they relate to child-on-child abuse. Bullying. This includes cyberbullying, prejudice-based and discriminatory bullying. Abuse in intimate personal relationships, and that's not limited to the age of consent. Physical abuse such as hitting, kicking, shaking, biting, hair pulling, or otherwise causing physical harm. This may include an online element which facilitates, threatens, and or encourages physical abuse. Sexual violence such as rape, assault by penetration, and sexual assault. This may include an online element which facilitates, threatens, and or encourages sexual violence. Sexual harassment, such as sexual comments, remarks, jokes, and online sexual harassment, which may be standalone or part of a broader pattern of abuse. And if we really think about sexual harassment and how that really starts in the early years, and how, as we said before about this banter and, oh, you know, they're just having a joke. And the one that always sticks out for me is if, for example, a boy pushes a girl over and, you know, the adult might say, oh, it's because he likes you. You know, we really need to be confident in thinking about how we can challenge that sort of behaviour really early on. Sexual activity without consent, such as forcing someone to strip, touch themselves sexually, or to engage in sexual activity with a third party. Consensual and non-consensual sharing of nude and semi-nude images and or videos, also known as sexting, or youth-produced sexual imagery. Upskirting, which typically involves taking a picture under a person's clothing without their permission, with the intention of causing the victim humiliation, distress, or alarm. And initiation, hazing type violence and rituals, which could include activities involving harassment, abuse, or humiliation, used as a way of initiating a person into a group, and may also include an online element. You will know if you've seen the rest of our safeguarding bite sizes, or if you don't know, we have got another safeguarding bite size that is about online safety. And so we do cover quite a lot of the online topics that we're talking about here within that bite size as well. All staff should be clear as to the school or college's policy and procedure with regard to child-on-child abuse and the important role they have to play in preventing it and responding where they believe a child may be at risk from it. Okay, what we really like to do in our bite sizes, and you will know this if you have been on our bite sizes before, that we like to show a case study that really helps to support what peer-on-peer abuse is, whatever the abuse is that we're talking about, so that we can really bring it to life, as it were, to make sure that it's really contextualised for your understanding. So this particular case study is a true case study about Billy. And this takes you from pre-birth all the way through to 15 years old. So we can really see the patterns and the twists and turns in Billy's story. And that is depicted here by this road, you know, showing his journey and showing the twists and turns along the way. So Billy's birth mother attended no antenatal classes. Previous children had also been taken into care, and the birth father also had a child from previous relationship adopted. And birth parents have drug and alcohol issues, and this is pre-birth. So this is us thinking about this child in utero and the sort of life that he's coming into. Billy was born 7 weeks early with fetal alcohol syndrome. Head swelling that lasted for 6 months, and the birth mother and Billy were transferred to a mother and baby placement with supervised care. In the first few months, there were issues around neglect from the birth mother. Billy's basic needs are not being met, and there's no bonding. And the intervention that was needed was an adoption was requested. So already not a very good start for Billy. Billy at 3 months was placed into foster care. It was a positive placement, and the foster carers identified feeding issues. At 8 months, he was adopted, as requested by the birth mother. Older sibling of 3 years, and a positive, although issues surrounding Billy's attachment's evident, a positive placement. Follows mum with eyes everywhere, which is what we'd be expecting from maybe a little bit younger, but at 8 months, this is what is happening for Billy. So little Billy has some problems with attachment, maybe attachment disorder, maybe other problems that he might come across. So at 2 years old, mum identifies gaps in Billy's development, a lack of speech and longer periods of tantrums, so throwing and breaking toys. So what some people might be describing as inappropriate or challenging behaviour, but there's a definite developmental delay. At 3 years old, Billy starts nursery. Speech starts to develop, and the support is offered by the nursery to support speech, language and communication. And again, they're highlighting this developmental delay. So when Billy starts reception, due to delays in speech, language and communication, Billy finds it difficult to settle. So he has issues with wetting and humiliated in front of the other children and unable to communicate needs with adults. And straight away, this is giving me goosebumps because we don't know any of the children that come into our care, whether they are stepping into a school classroom, whether they're stepping into a college or a nursery. We don't know what their journey has been. And actually, this little boy starting reception, he's got delays in his speech and language and communication and has had issues from utero. You know, he's had so many things that are going wrong for him, and really needs our support. But how do we react to that? And I think it's really important for us to reflect as practitioners and teachers along the way to think about, okay, if this little boy was in my setting and I didn't know all of that background, how am I responding to this little boy? How am I ensuring that he socialises? He's struggling to settle in and unable to communicate his needs. In Key Stage 1, there's changes in behaviour that are challenging, and he's becoming aggressive at home, hitting mom. And although reading's at the expected level, Billy finds the concept of numbers extremely challenging. Mom seeks support from school, asks if she could keep Billy back an academic year, and told this would involve missing a year in Key Stage 2. In Key Stage 2, he's struggling with friendships. He's struggling with making any sort of progress. So by the end of Key Stage 2, he sits his SATs test despite mum's concerns, inaccurate assessment made, and mum feels he's been set up to fail in secondary school. The peer-on-peer bullying begins. This little boy has one particular traumatic event that leaves him completely traumatised, and mum feels little support is offered by the school. So his attitude to education at the moment must be really, really low. At 11 to 12, when he starts secondary school, Billy's ready for a change. Despite bullies going to the same school, mum informs school of the primary events. Mum's still working part-time but unable to collect from school. Billy forms inappropriate friendships, hanging round with people after school. Home life's challenging. The adverse child experiences intensifies with puberty and hormone changes. Food is a focus for Billy, and there's issues around storing food. That's often around control and the concerns over mental health and well-being. In year 8, Billy's behaviour escalates. He becomes violent, and mum decides to give up work to care for Billy. The grandmother also moves in. She suffers with dementia. Mum's taking and collecting Billy from school to reduce his anxiety. He's given up all after-school clubs, but he's more relaxed about food, and psychologists are suggesting NVR approach, which is the non-violence resistance approach. In year 9, he's very, very unsettled as he starts year 9, and challenging aggressive behaviour continues. Billy goes missing and is eventually found later in the evening in the town. And now there's the pressure of choosing options at school. And then lockdown begins in March 2019. And surprisingly, this has a positive impact on Billy as there's no pressure from school. However, this brings new challenges with the amount of time spent on the computer. And as time progresses, the new routine creates changes in behaviour. The start of year 10 is very tricky. He's been placed into classes with individuals that disrupt his learning. The no school uniform rule has created new challenges, and Billy struggles to wear any new clothes as he has an issue surrounding self-image. Then further COVID restrictions send Billy into violent rages. Police are called after he attacks mum with a knife. Support's offered through outside agencies as well as more visits to see the therapist. Billy refuses to go to school due to further bullying. Mum seeks support from school, although this is short-lived, and Billy suffers a serious attack from another child at school. In Easter 2020, Mum decides to ask Billy if he would like to be homeschooled, and Billy writes a letter listing all the reasons for being homeschooled. First 2 week very successful, enjoyed spending time with mum. Next few weeks become challenging, no learning takes place. Billy spends time in his room and mum worries that he's becoming agoraphobic. So we can really start to see the long-term effects that some of these things have on Billy. Following guidance from psychologists, mum seeks support through local family, offering an opportunity to allow Billy to work on the farm as work experience. This has a positive impact on Billy's behaviour. He begins to show a real interest on the farm, giving him responsibilities as well as new skills, and behaviour at home begins to change. This is the turning point for Billy as he continues to work on the farm, learning new skills and particularly interested in sustainability. Behaviour at home is positive. He starts an interest in reading and begins to think about his future and asks Mum about taking his GCSEs. Billy's learning has been ignited. He continues to work on the farm, begins to plan for his future, and now helps at home with Grandma as well. He continues to be ignited and is very much loved and amazing. He's very much loved and amazing that his mum is his everyday with his resilience. Billy is a true inspiration to us all. So we can really see there the journey of Billy and how those vulnerabilities in the early days really impacted on his socialisation. We can also see, and I think all of us have seen, the impact of socialisation during the COVID pandemic and how we as teachers and educators can really support all of the children in being kind to one another and to really notice some of these things that are happening. It was clear to see that Mum had some issues with bullying and she'd been in and she'd spoken to the school numerous times, but the support was not being put in place. And so we really need to think about that, and I think we can all reflect on that of how much we observe and how many of these inappropriate behaviours we are actually challenging. Case studies really do bring topics to life and allow us to reflect on the topic in an evaluative and analytical way. So we can have a look at these case studies, and I think we often look at case studies in safeguarding topics so that we can say, okay, that's a lesson learned, we need to change that. That's something that we need to reflect on. This is what we can do here to avoid these things happening again. Ofsted was asked by the government to carry out a rapid review of sexual abuse in schools and colleges. They looked at safeguarding and curriculum, multi-agency safeguarding arrangements, victims' voice and reporting. And you can see the link there at the bottom of the page, and we'll share some of the findings with you. And there might be a little bit of a shock. Nearly 90% of girls and nearly 50% of boys said being sent explicit pictures or videos of things they did not want to see happens a lot or sometimes to them or their peers. This first set of statistics shows high levels, and they went on to report that on their visits, girls told them that sexual harassment and online sexual abuse, such as being sent explicit sexual material and being pressured into nude pictures, was much more prevalent than adults realise. 92% of girls and 74% of boys said sexist name calling happens a lot or sometimes to them or their peers. This again is very high, and children and young people told them that sexual harassment occurs so frequently that it has become commonplace. The frequency of these harmful sexual behaviours means that some children and young people consider them normal. Children and young people, especially girls, told us that they do not want to talk about sexual abuse for several reasons, even where their school encourages them to. And this finding is concerning. And examples given for this included the risk of being ostracised by peers or getting peers into trouble. It's not considered to be worth it for something perceived by children and young people to be commonplace. They worry about how adults will react because they'll think they're not believed or that they will be blamed. They also think that once they talk to an adult, the process will be out of their control. I think we can really learn from all of these things. Children and young people were rarely positive about the RSHE they had received. Professionals consistently underestimated the prevalence of online sexual abuse, even when there was a proactive whole school approach to tackling sexual harassment and violence. They felt that the RSHE curriculum was too little too late, and that the curriculum was not equipping them with the information and advice they needed to navigate the reality of their lives. And because of these gaps, they told them they turned to social media or their peers to educate each other, which understandably made some feel resentful. As one girl put it shouldn't be our responsibility to educate boys. There are lots of things that we have considered today, lots of issues and challenges, but I hope more than anything you have taken lots of reflection time for yourself to think about all of the things that we've discussed and think about how that is impacting on our policies and, most importantly, on our day-to-day practice. When we see any of these challenging behaviours, what are we doing? When we see inappropriate language being used, what are we doing? And what is in your policy and procedure to help you with supporting the children and young people in our care, including the staff as well that we're supporting, that we're working with? We have got some upcoming bite-sized webinars that are really interesting and offer lots of advice and tips and guidance and lots of things that you can do in your everyday working teaching life. And those are child abuse linked to faith or belief, wider forms of child abuse, which looks at FGM, it looks at child sexual exploitation, and lots of other areas of wider forms of abuse. We also have a look at prevent duty and radicalisation, domestic abuse and county lines. For more information and registration details, please visit the website, which is by the VCerts and the support webinars that you can click onto and register for. We're nearing the end of today's session, and we'd like you to think about your confidence level following today's session. So how confident are you now with your knowledge and understanding of child-on-child abuse? 10 being extremely confident and 1 being not confident. So hopefully you've travelled a journey with us today to improve your confidence and to improve your knowledge and understanding too. Are there any questions you'd like to ask? If the answer is yes, I've got quite a few questions to ask, then please do not hesitate to contact one of the provider development team or myself, Stacey Mann. All I have left to do is to say thank you for attending and participating in this session today. You will be asked to complete an evaluation of the session and complete feedback so that we can make sure that these bite sizes are really useful for you and beneficial to your practice. So thanks again, goodbye, and please stay safe.